Hello, everyone. Welcome to the eCommerce podcast. We're here in Amsterdam Center today with Imteaz Ahamed, who is the head of performance marketing for nutrition. Welcome to eCommerce, Imteaz.
Thank you for having me, Mo. This is lovely to be back in Amsterdam in the same office that I was actually based in about 5 years ago.
Let's span out on the global map. And you worked in multiple geographies. You mentioned them from all the way Australia, APAC to the North America. You covered the entire map, I assume. And you mentioned quick glimpse of the toddler portion of the business, US versus the rest of the world. When it comes to this digital capabilities around first-party data, performance marketing, and the partnerships between retail and CPG, how do you compare different regions, different business units around the world in terms of maturity and advancements?
Okay, so my experience has more so been in the Western markets. I haven't worked in the East. I haven't worked in China. I haven't worked in ASEAN. So within my experience in the West, the US market, certainly from an Amazon point of view, as well as from a Walmart point of view, Walmart leads omni experience, and Amazon obviously leads pure play, right? So the US, I would say, is by far the most mature market, and hence why I'm in the US. Now, when I worked across Europe and Australia, certainly from a omni experience point of view, the likes of Tesco, it was very interesting in terms of the work they're doing, Carrefour in Europe as well. But from a setting up a strategy point of view, it has to be very specific to your region and very specific to your brand and category.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. If you're in a category where there's two clear brand leaders who combine to make 90% share, for example, and your competitor is not doing any retail media on a particular retailer, why would you invest?
Right.
Right? Like, yeah, if they're not doing anything and your share of shelf looks okay, you're organically winning. If you're organically winning, don't do anything. And sometimes that's an okay strategy. Like, don't poke the bear sometimes and, prompt everybody to enter. So what I would say is that sometimes taking the learnings from the US or taking the learnings from another market and applying it into another market doesn't always work. Maybe Amazon's an exception to that because Amazon is quite consistent in terms of execution. But when I look at Omni in particular, every retailer is using very different systems. Everyone has different measurement frameworks and parameters. So you take the learning, but don't necessarily apply it like for like in your math.
And it also could be stemmed from the top-to-top meetings or JPB discussions with your retailer partners, and sometimes they might persuade brand teams to invest more than they're supposed to do, or they can invest to your point. If you're already winning 40+ share with organic, why do you have to increase your digital media spend 20% year over year? Sometimes brand teams are not in control or don't have enough understanding, and they just listen to the recommendation from retailer partner, or their arms were wristed maybe.
It's dangerous when a salesperson is talking media
Without knowing the data behind.
without doing media, and a marketing person talking JVP with a concept. I don't have that experience.
Citizen data scientists' understanding of data or hands-on experience become impartial to the current digital commerce teams, and I'm giving you kudos on this. Your teams is turning it all around with 360, and that's where all the digital commerce teams should be going, in my humble perspective. Now I want to bring the famous two-letter sexy word of our decade. Let's talk about some AI tools and solutions you've been using, you about to implement, or you see some massive success in the past. How are you utilizing AI in terms of your current performance marketing, and what are you planning to bring in furthermore, if you can share some glimpse?
Sure. So two applications of AI, and I'm going to blend machine learning into this as well. We clearly think machine learning is way more interesting for me.
People forget about ML lately. Everything's about Gen AI now.
Well, I think ML gives you more immediate value versus sexy AI stuff. So I'll give you a boring, it's not boring, I think it's actually quite sexy.
It's still exciting thing.
It's exciting for me. But I'll give you two examples. The first one is in terms of media buying. So from the data clean room, we're extracting all of this audience data and we're creating tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of audiences, right? We're using a mathematical model called the multi-arm bandit model.
Okay, yeah.
That essentially
Data science, okay.
that essentially is mixing and matching audiences, campaign settings, and creative,
Right.
and doing permutation and combination of these, figuring out which of those audiences, which combination of those three things is actually delivering performance, whatever we define performance as. Could be top line, could be bottom line, could be market share, whatever that we want to optimize against, and is doing that by itself. And machine learning doesn't sleep. I don't need somebody awake testing these campaigns because the machine is actually monitoring this.
Right.
So this is one internal capability that we built to leverage, not just use the data clean room for measurement, which is a reachable use case of data clean rooms, but more so for activation.
Is this for US market?
Yes.
Okay. Not global?
Not yet.
Okay.
The second thing is using Gen AI to do the boring stuff that people should do part of their jobs, but they don't do.
Okay.
So we have tens of thousands of assets, probably hundreds of thousands of creative assets. So we've used Gen AI to go through all of these assets and tag them properly into our DAM, right? So not just things like brand and size and spec, things like that, but also things like what's the marketing claim inside of the asset set? Yeah. What's the call to action used? What's the color scheme used for which brand and which SKU? So it's identifying all of these things.
6 attributes, 7 attributes minimum, I guess.
There's more.
Well, I'm sure, yeah.
But those are like common ones. Now, in the Amazon DSP, what's very cool is that every image gets its own unique creative ID, which is mapped to its own campaign ID.
Yes, right.
So for the first time, I am actually seeing impressions, clicks, and sales by marketing claim. So I'm actually seeing effectiveness metrics, not just at a created level, but an aggregated marketing claim level.
Okay.
For a call to action or a size and spec and placement level. So this has informed our own generative AI model, where we started to create our own DSP assets using Gen AI. So rather than have someone start at scratch every time we have a new launch or have a new packaging that we have to tell people about, we're using our own internal system to generate these new assets so that the designer starts at like step 8 rather than step 1. So the system kind of puts all of these things together, looks at historical performance, looks at historical creative, uses all of the insights, creates an image, creates a DSP image. It also layers the image for us. So when the designer actually exports the image, they're getting it as a layered file in ESD.
Right.
So we're not removing humans. We're keeping humans in the loop when it comes to AI. But we're making that process way more efficient. And this is the trick. I think people get lost in all the shiny new stuff when it comes to AI, is that you just got to think about what process takes so much time. How do I use AI and machine learning to cut time rather than, have the expectation that it's going to make my 30-second ad for my next brand launch because I'm going to write 10 lines of prompt. It's not life hack.
This is a great point because I think there's a perception in the general public that AI is just one red button and you just put some inputs, raw ingredients, and press the red AI button and everything is spit out as a ready to use output with perfect results. It's not like that. There's increments in between. And I'm glad you mentioned that you're not removing human element, but you're just adding or empowering them with the AI tools, AI capabilities. Then it brings me the broader and longer discussion of digital content production or end-to-end content management, because I know, like every other CPG, your digital content is fed into your PIM, product information management system, into your DEM, like you mentioned, digital assets. But somebody has to start with the creation of this content, and your content is probably geared towards for commerce, for social, for performance marketing. Can you walk us through a little bit of a global brand portfolio like Reckitt? And I'm amazed that you mentioned you have more than 200 brands with the long tail in different markets. how do you ensure your content, digital content supply chain is empowered across different markets? And just in summary, in a quick view, how do you maintain its integrity and seamless touch while you're fine-tuning all these tags and performance marketing attributes, tying into the sales attribution and everything else?
I specialized in nutrition over the last 4 years, so I'm kind of removed from the rest of the organization. Yeah. But within nutrition, one of the great things is that it is a limited portfolio. So within, the North American market, we're talking 100-ish SKUs for a $2 billion at scan type of business. So the portfolio limitation actually helps us because we don't have to manage chaos. Very easy to manage. It's a lot easier to manage versus when I was on the health side or the hygiene side of the business. In one market we might have 800-900 SKUs. I can't imagine. And a lot of localization because of regulatory requirements for that. Where I see this done well is when a global team gives you a deployment pack, or in terms of master brand assets, and gives you guidance on what it should be, but doesn't tell you exactly what you need to do. Because it is impossible for a global team or a regional team to localize for every single retailer in the market that you operate in. Another thing I don't like is where a global team tells you which PIM provider or which syndicator that you have to use, right? Because it's so bespoke to what the market needs are, and is also very custom to what the retailers you work with, your priority retailers at least, kind of need. So I think there is a role for global teams to give you a deployment pack to get started with and refresh and capture learnings from different markets. All that stuff is good. But the closer you have the hands-on keyboard to the execution, the faster you're going to be and the more you're going to execute.
Okay, there's a friendly message here for the global COEs. I worked in the past, so I appreciate the feedback. Now I want to bring it to the hard part, which we like both on the data science part. When it comes to measurement of the performance of this digital content, we all rely on digital shelf analytics, digital shelf tools. Where do you see the current status of digital shelf measurement globally in CPG world? And if you like to share, where do you see Reckitt in that journey? Do you see Reckitt is in the journey, in the nascency, in advanced? Are you satisfied with the current digital shelf measurement capabilities in place, or do you expect more?
I think the challenge with DSA right now is mainly there's no consistency, just like in terms of retail media measurement right now, there's no consistency, right? And, when Nielsen got consistency in terms of how to measure market share for offline, and everybody in the industry now agrees how to measure offline market share. When you get to that standard, then I think, you have that consistency across everything. Now, we're not there yet for DSA. We're not there yet for retail media performance measurement, but on the journey there, you need to figure out what is actually important for your brand, right? So, again, back to the baby formula category, over 75, close to 80% of the search volume is branded traffic, is branded keywords, right? Only 15, 20% is category keywords. People already know what brand they want before they get to the shelf, right? Yeah. So in terms of measuring DSA, in terms of measuring a share shelf, most of the keyword volume, especially if you're a market leader, is actually coming from branded keywords, not category keywords. Right. So if we just only focus on the category keywords from a measurement point of view, then we're missing first of the whole journey, the whole journey. So again, there's nuance because every keyword is a shelf, right? Right. Exactly. So and it's impossible, depending, then you can apply Pareto, right? In the sense that what are the top 20 keywords that make up 80% of the value? But again, it needs to be nuanced by category because I remember looking at Tesco, and this is data from 8 years ago, but the conversion rate on keyword bleach in Tesco UK is higher than 100%. What do I mean by that? What I mean is when somebody types in bleach on a Tesco.com, people are 100% guaranteed to add something to cart,
Okay.
sometimes more than one unit. So that's why when you do add to cart versus number of searches, the conversion rate is higher than 100%.
See how we say there is no window shopping for bleach. When you're there, you gotta buy something. You're gonna buy something.
Nobody types in bleach.
Just for the category browsing.
No.
Okay.
No one's window shopping for bleach.
Exactly.
So the key outtake here is figure out how you're actually going to prioritize this. Now, the other part of this equation is online availability as a proxy to offline availability specifically, right? So there are a lot of people doing this right now, from Proctero to Nielsen IQ, etc. But looking at reliable online shelf availability and marrying that to what you're doing from a performance media point of view is mission critical now, especially if you're spending billions of dollars on it. It's a media and your product assortment is not available. What are you doing? And if you're, especially on DSP, if it's landing on products that are not, if the click-through is to products that are not available or not going to like a brand landing page where you have at least an assortment of products available, you're wasting dollars. And
This is like shelf 101.
exactly. So, yeah, these are things that I would say the industry is still working on, and I would say Reckitt is still working on.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that actually. Yes, some of us, some CPGs or some individuals across those CPGs were in a different point in our journey because we're able to integrate commerce perspective, media perspective, as well as data perspective. But I think it's still a journey, and it will take thousands of us to come onto a same level, learn from each other, and also bring the providers with us, tech providers and retailers, unlocking those capabilities. Now we want to shift focus towards another favorite areas of yours, which we worked in the past, D2C. With COVID, of course, all the focus suddenly shifted to B2C omnichannel and fulfillment, making product available online. But now I think I see another growth trajectory towards D2C. Brands are also started investing in their brand sites and everything else. How is Reckitt trending or stacking against competitors when it comes to D2C because of your category? And what capabilities are you building? What capabilities are you investing on? Can you share some details around that, please?
Sure. So I was in the D2C business for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And at that time, D2C was hot. Like everyone wanted to do it. Everyone wanted to show results. I would say D2C for Reckitt right now, I wouldn't say it's the primary focus. It's part of the e-commerce mix. It certainly gives us very high quality transactional data for a certain percentage of our shoppers, which is great, but I don't think it's a focus. Now, I think one of the hardest things about D2C within CPG, I don't know how many other acronyms I can throw. The hardest thing is making the P&L work, especially if you're in a category where your average order value or your basket is less than $10. It doesn't make sense. Now, in nutrition, baby formula is an expensive category, so it does make sense to do this.
And they have high unit packs.
Oh, and we have $100+ right packs. So D2C does make sense. But when other CPGs look at my D2C experience and go, oh, we want to do D2C, and I'm like, have you thought about portfolio strategy? Like, if you're just trying to take exactly the same SKUs that you're selling on Tesco and Walmart and Amazon and expect it just to do well because your brand.com gets 10,000 traffic on a monthly basis, you completely dreaming. Like, it doesn't work. That's why we've seen so many large scale failures when it comes to D2C acquisitions by CPG, like Dollar Shave Club being divorced by Unilever. So yeah, it was an exciting period of time for CPG, unless if you're a pure D2C specialist with a business that can make your P&L work from order number one, or you're a TikTok level company that can spend, Temu level company that can spend $100 billion on acquisition for a period of time and be okay with loss.
Right.
If your focus is short-term profitability or immediate-term profitability, it's very hard to make D2C work in CPG.
That's another good point, and I know many food and beverage category, CPG brands, and some other hard lines, which has average price points below $20, $25, are creating with multi-packs or assortment packs, but it still cost to serve is high and profitability is a big challenge unless you're a digital native or you already conquered this channel before you extend it to B2C. And I think D2C has a still good purpose to play in terms of data, in terms of shopper insights, in terms of brand equity and power. But when it comes to making an impact, moving the needle, or generating meaningful portion of revenue, it has a long way to go. I think we can agree on that. Now, I want you to ask about some emerging technologies, and in two prongs. One, which emerging technologies are you excited about nowadays, experimenting with or implementing recently, or what technologies do you want to see from the industry, from the tech providers that you think it would make an impact? Can you give us two-prong answer?
Sure. The technology that I'm fascinated by right now is conversational commerce.
Right.
So Perplexity AI, I think yesterday or the day before, just launched in shop within Perplexity, and the CEO was asked, "How does this work and how do I rank?" And he said, "I don't know." And so CEO doesn't know yet. More realistic, he said, "Oh, it gives me hope to explain this to my senior level executives one day." But this new way of interacting is going to take over our lives. ChatGPT adoption is increasing. Chat adoption is increasing every day. Social commerce is increasing every day. If we look at how easy it is to do these things now, anything that you give users to become more lazy, you will have adoption no matter what, right?
I agree. And I found our generation fortunate in that regard. I'm Gen X. And anybody after Gen Z, late Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they didn't see what we've seen 2 decades ago. And we're fortunate enough to see those two massive transitions. First, .com era.
Yep.
We had to adapt this e-commerce online. And now we're getting into a much accelerated, much digital domain. So we're going to experience 2 big milestones while the younger generations don't know what was like it before 1995 or 2000. Interesting times. Now, as an experienced senior leader in CPG and especially digital commerce, media, and data, I want to hear your recommendations because now we're approaching to the end of our conversation. And I'm glad I talked to someone who understands data as much as commerce and media. I'm very passionate about these topics. But I want to also hear your recommendations or tips to the younger generations, as I pointed out, who is joining the force recently, or who is looking for new options, new roles in the industry to make a career progressive change. What do you recommend to people who is interested in digital commerce, who is excited about data? What's your experiences and some tips you can share with them?
My biggest recommendation is the earlier you are in your career, right, be as broad as possible.
Okay.
Rather than choosing a specific track and specializing from the early stage of your career. So I was very fortunate to jump into have experience with shopper marketing about 12 years ago when dunnhumby launched in Australia and partnered with Woolworths, who launched Quantia, which is Woolworths' data company. So I got to learn all of these new metrics. At the time, was new metrics of inter-purchase interval, substitutability, loyalty, and I got to do a full range review using these metrics for the first time in Australia 12 years ago. Now I look back at that experience 12 years ago, and I'm applying those principles to the data science work, to the data clean room work that I'm doing right now. So whenever you get an opportunity to learn something new, as long as it's relevant to the path that you're on, always jump at it. Even if you're just that one person. Like when I joined eCommerce, I had another colleague who actually turned down this opportunity. So I was pick number 2.
Okay.
And his perspective was e-commerce is less than 1% of my business. It's, I could join a $100+ million business managing ABCD account. Why should I go, this seems like a step back, doesn't seem like a step forward. But then when I consulted my mentors who, 5-6 levels above me, their feedback was, you need to jump into this right now, right? So when you're younger, you don't have that perspective. But, if somebody was telling me I want to get into e-commerce, I would say get as broad experience within that category as you can, or within that industry as you can early on. And then once you figure out what you want to specialize in, then go for it. We need more generalists. With the advent of AI and machine learning, all this stuff that is coming, the key skill would be, how do you adapt to these new technologies to the way it's working? And you can't adapt things if you don't understand how the end-to-end of an organization kind of works. So that's why I'm pushing people to become more generalists rather than specialists, because the machines are going to specialize way more than hopefully will be absolutely ever be able to do.
So I have another interesting term for a generalist, one I mentioned a couple of times. Sometimes it just got the right reaction, sometimes it didn't make any sense. I call us who is investing their time in more than one specialty, I call us a Renaissance man. Because to your point, you're right. Now we need to synchronize and conduct multiple specialties, multiple skills at once in order to make it meaningful and successful in e-commerce. So I appreciate the generalist approach, and that's a powerful one. Now, Imteaz, I learned many important tidbits during our conversation. Thank you very much for joining the show. And I want to thank you for the eCommerce podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you in Amsterdam. And I'm glad we brought you some of your old memories back in the day when you were working in the exact same building. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is another rep with Imteaz Ahamed, who is currently leading the performance marketing for the nutrition division at Reckitt. Until next time, stay ahead of the curve.